project had just recently started, so I got to work on the blueprint. It is a relatively simple table, minus the part where I drill a hole to make waves for some cables. Nothing in my room is particularly complex, so making some intricate design that I'll need to carve in with a knife would be a complete waste. I also need to consider painting it, given I lack sandpaper to sand it with. When I do cut the base pieces of wood, I'll need to grab a wire cutter or anything similar to that to remove anything that could give a splinter. For the legs themselves, I'm going to have a bit more trouble in that area. Getting all the legs to be even is going to be difficult, because all my tools need me to get more experience to use them properly, and I don't have said experience. I do have something of a plan though. I can stack the pieces of wood together using a clamp and cut them while they are clamped together. This way I can confirm that half the leg pulls will work. I could even raise the height of the table to match my bed. This is just speculation though, I'll see what happens when I actually get to this part of the project. So it rained earlier. The wood got absolutely soaked, which is really just a great sign for the future. The wood is definitely going to end up twisted, which is really just a monkey wrench in my gears right about now. Given I lack the ever so magical abilities of a planer, if they're twisted to a large extent, well, not much I can do in a situation like that. I'll need to get real creative with how I go about making the legs. I thought of a relatively solid idea, but with a rather large flaw. What if I cut it all into small pieces and slowly work the blocks up together? Kind of like Minecraft or like Legos. The pieces would need to be small enough to where I can use them freely and creatively, but also big enough to where I'm not literally making a table out of low quality knockoff Lego pieces. So, under the assumption that I'm dealing with a worst case outcome, and that my only way to get out of the situation was to become Frankenstein himself and create a monster out of wood, chances are things aren't that bad, I'm likely just overreacting. So, I was overreacting. The previous coat of paint helped a lot in protecting the wood from rain. Anyways, I have all the wood pieces currently. It's just a matter of actually cutting the wood and assembling the table. I intend on cutting the wood first, and then covering in a new coat of paint because admittedly, it currently looks more ugly than my glasses after getting hit with sawdust. It also needs a new coat of paint to ensure that splinters are not an issue. Ow. Forgot to mention, too, there are some nails still stuck in the wood from before I removed it, so I'll need to grab a hammer and remove that relatively soon. So, the wood I'm using I'm not exactly too thrilled with. It has a lot of problems. Granted, I don't really know what I was expecting here. The wood that I am using is from when I broke apart a deck using a pickaxe, which really explains a lot. Naturally speaking, if you don't use the right tools for that job, it's going to cause a lot of problems, and that's what I'm currently afraid that I might be facing here. The wood could split apart because when you use a pickaxe to split apart planks of wood, it splits horizontally rather than vertically, which means that there could be cracks and crevices inside of the wood that I have no idea about and can't exactly find. This could cause issues when I actually want to cut the wood, which might actually ruin the project if I can't find a replacement or enough glue to fix it, which shouldn't be that big a deal. Not the project being ruined, but like finding replacements, considering I have a lot of wood at home. But it is going to be rather time consuming to go through this over and over again, assuming it could happen potentially 3 to 4 times, just assuming on what I currently have to use. But from what I do have, I think I should be fine, and I'm just concerned over nothing. But we'll figure that out when I get home. At maximum, the height of the legs need to be 18.5 inches. Otherwise, it's going to interfere with the outlet. I decided to go against my ideal of drilling a hole through the table, given, well, it would cause a lot of problems with the cables. So instead, I'm just going to have it be right under it, so I still have like the maximum length of the cable to use to my advantage, but at the same time, I don't have to worry about the cable being ruined because it has to go through an entire bend, and holding that position would cause some issues with the copper wiring inside of the actual tubes. Painting things is going to be necessary in this project, given the pieces of wood I'm using are rather iffy, to say the least. I might need to grab maybe some thick paper or like some pieces of plastic, some small pieces of wood to cover up any indents or hole within the project and table itself. But I also couldn't need to. I'll need to check after I cut it. The paint, anyway, is going to solve me the trouble of needing to sand it a million times, given I still lack sandpaper. And it'll, like this way, it will look nice, which I'm not too concerned with how it looks, I just want it to be functional, but it is relatively important in terms of finishing the project. I intend on using a handsaw to cut the wood, given that it will give me more control over how I cut things and allow me to be more precise. Also, won't need to worry as much about getting rid of splinters, but I'll still have the wire cutters, or really cutters in general, ready just in case. Otherwise, I think I should be fine overall. I don't think I'm going to miss out on anything particularly big by not using a table saw. I should be fine, but we can figure that out later.
I've done the painting and I'm currently in the process of gluing the flat of the table. As of right now, it is 5:23 a.m., and I'm waiting for glue to finish solidifying so I can nail the legs to the table and be finished with the table. As for why I'm awake at 5 a.m. waiting for glue to solidify, this is the second time I have glued this. The first time ended in two pieces of wood falling onto my toes and me looking at it in complete disappointment. After the first 24-hour period is over, I should be fine, even if I am lacking on clamps. Clamps are my biggest issue here, although I went around that issue by stacking the wood pieces vertically, using gravity to my advantage, and even though it isn't as good as clamp, it is something. As I'm going to put the table through intense stress, so it being as strong as possible is not a major priority. It is basically how I reason myself through this. I currently just have the legs sitting by my table, by my legs, near the legs of my chair, legs. In terms of actually finishing the table itself, I have nothing else to do. It was a rather simple process with a simple design and a simple idea. Now it just comes to video editing and the process of making audio bearable. I'll have a few more lines of dialogue here and there, presumably during the time period where I am editing the video.
So I'm going to be painting all of these, including this one right here, using this to record it, but I'd rather listen to music. And here we have the flat side of the table that I am currently letting glue. Unfortunately, seeing I do not have clamps, it is going to be sticking like this, so the, well, gravity hold it down. You can figure out the rest. Over here we have the actual legs project. And we have a box of nails I'm going to use to actually nail to the flat of the table. Over here you can see that rather clearly. The table is going to be sticking underneath this outlet over here, so that I can actually reach both my phone and the table from my bedside over there. It should, in theory, work just fine, as long as I keep the table relatively away from my desk so my chair doesn't hit it. But in other words, I don't see any issues. I also don't know how to end this with mittens on. Here we can see an early idea for what I wanted the table to be like. As you can see, there's actually a cable management hole which originally was supposed to sit above the outlet to allow for cables to pass through in order for me to cable manage with ease. Unfortunately, it was completely pointless and did not help whatsoever and actually might have damaged the cable. And speaking of pointless, let's look at the legs here for a second. Originally I had intended on the legs being two separate planks of wood. Of course, that did not make it into final design because, as I found out, the wood was extremely thick as is. I did not need to add another plank of wood to ensure that the table would sit upright without it falling. After that, I had tinkered around with some more ideas, mainly how I would get the table flat surface to stick together. I just went with glue because it was the most simple and also the most efficient way of getting the table to stick together. Of course, this wouldn't work for the legs, so I devised an idea where I would grab hinges, which is actually shown on the back here, to screw or nail onto the wood pieces themselves, onto the roof, and onto the legs. This way I could get an easy way to get the table to stick together without it falling apart and breaking and falling on my leg. Here we have another, well, idea board of how I would cut the wood. As you can clearly see here, I had a lot of bad ideas, most of which were not shown because I did not bother to draw them. My best idea here was to take what is supposed to be a saw, which is clear as scissors, and some clamps to clamp the wood together and then cut off the wood all at once. Unfortunately, this plan completely fell through because I did not have clamps. And seeing as I didn't have clamps, I also could not complete my other idea of gluing it all together using clamps. So you can see the lot of project kind of had to be, well, forced together with a lot of glue, or metaphorical glue, in order to get it to work, and seeing as it's still gluing over there, I will update the process once it is all done.
The table is done, and the results are iffy, to say the least. A lot of my original ideas were thrown out and replaced with more solid plans during the process of gluing, and it shows. My prediction of the wood splitting once I hit it with a nail came true as well, which is slightly disappointing, but I already knew what to do to fix it. There'll be a picture here to show the damage. My fix for it was to nail a nail through the side of the table, to basically staple the wood back. Kinda like sticking a slice of cake into a cake and then stabbing through it. As for the stability of the table, it's solid enough for what I intend on doing with it. Unless I intend on dropping myself onto the table, which already most tables can take. It will stand just fine. The entire reason this table even exists is just to keep my phone, glasses, keys, and masks near me when I wake up so I don't immediately forget them, as I've done tens of times this quarter. That is my project, and thank you for watching.